Well, hello and welcome to the new BrowEdit 3 video. In this video, I'm going to be showcasing a little bit about what I've been building so far. And first thing, when you start up BrowEdit, you'll get some configuration windows, so you don't have to edit any files anymore. You can browse for files, but for me, I'm just gonna type them manually. Um, and you have to enter your RO directory, which is in here for me. And you will get some errors if you do it wrongly. Here's the other one. I need to add a grf. And yeah, if you type something wrong, you'll get a wrong, you'll get an error message. And then, of course, we have the other data file, the R data. You can basically sort them around if you want to. They'll get prioritized. And you can add some, remove some, and you can browse for the file if you want to. We can change our field of view. Personally, I prefer a little bit higher than this. Mouse speed, we can change the skins. So if you prefer a light view, that's also possible. Um, Thumbnail size, basically there's some different settings that we can set here, but they're fine for now. So I'm just gonna open this GRF. And for now, only object mode is really implemented. So we can change to different modes, but they won't do anything. So I'm gonna stick with object edit mode, and I'm gonna start opening a map. Um, Now, this is basically my testing map, so let's open a different one. Uh, so we have Frontera, and well, we can control the mouse, we can look around just like before. And first thing you'll notice is a ton of buttons. So over here we have a 2D and 3D camera. So now the camera is 2D, and as you can see, this is perfect for making those cute little thumbnail shots. We can enable and disable the shadow map, so now the shadows will be disabled. We can enable the color map. Well, this map doesn't really have a color map, so I'm going to open one that does. For instance, Komodo. Komodo has a nice one. And if you disable the color map, yeah, the colors get disabled, shadows get disabled. Maps can open up in tabs, but they can also open up in sub-windows. So actually you can put them side by side. And yeah, this is quite useful because actually you can open two views for Commodore for Frontera. So over here I can, where was that option? Open a new view. And now we've got a second view of Frontera. Let me put it over here. And basically they're independent of each other. So I can disable the shadows here and you can still see them here. And the other way around, I can disable the textures here. You can still see them here. I'm gonna close that one. So we have tile colors. You can see there's some little discolorations over there. Then there is let me enable it again. We have the lighting. And the lighting gets disabled on the map and on the objects themselves. So this object is now very flat shaded. And if we enable the lighting again, it will get shaded again. And then this one hides the textures for everything. So this way it's easier to see the shading and all the details. It's useful for debugging when you're working with lights, because this way it's really easy to see all the shadows and all the effects. Let's enable them again. Over here we have a smooth color map option, and that one is pretty good to see in Payon Dungeon. Right now you can see the lighting is pretty smooth, and when I enable this, it becomes the way the RO client renders it. And some clients, they have some hack, so you can actually enable and disable this in the game, so you can make it look prettier. Then we have something to show lights. Well, this map doesn't have any lights, so nothing shows. Something for light spheres, I'll get to that later. This is the quad tree, so this is the information about rendering. And here you can double check if the quad tree is rendered correctly. The boxes should contain the 3D models. So you see around the church are a lot more boxes than, for instance, here in the center. So yeah, this should encapsulate everything, and it does because this is just a plain default map. Then I'm going to remove that again. We've got a snap to grid button with the grid size and a local or a global snapping and some moving, scaling, rotating gizmos. So yeah, basically we can select some objects, one object. With Shift you can select multiple objects, and well, we can move them around like this. I can hide the shadow. There's an undo feature, so we can basically undo everything again. And if you want to select everything around here, we have selection, grow. We have a couple of options like the same models, but for now I want a near distance. Select all objects near, and it will select all the objects in a close range. So that makes it a little bit easier to select everything. Can undo that again, of course. And even if you just select the fountain, we can grow the selection and select everything nearby and basically grab everything. There's also a right click menu. So actually, if you've accidentally set everything a little bit too high, we can set them to the floor height, and then everything gets set to the floor height, which is quite convenient. There's copy paste, so we can copy. I can paste. The paste preview is still yeah, a little bit buggy, but when you place everything, it will show properly, and we can move them around. Delete to delete them. Just press the delete button. Then we have a select same, which is also useful. Suppose you want to change all the trees. Yeah, you can basically select one tree, select the same, and you'll get all the trees. And say you want to replace them with a different model. Down here we have the object picker. That used to be a window. Well, you can still make it a window, so you can undock it. And now it's basically a window that you can open and close with this button here. But I prefer it docked. Oh, not over there, but over here. And over here we have, yeah, basically all the objects. So we have 3D models with a small preview. And you can't see it in the video, but there's a small pop-up here that shows all the tags for a model. Models are organized with tags, and you can search for tags in this box here. I can right-click, and you also don't get to see that pop-up. But you can right-click the model, and basically there's a no. I'm gonna change this. Okay, you can't see it because it's used in too many maps. The smaller ones here, you can see the pop-up, but the pop-up here gets out of the window, and then you can't see it on the stream, on the video. So you're gonna have to believe me for that. But if you right-click the window here, there it is. You get a pop-up, and basically there's a couple of options here. You can add tags, so you can say, oh, this is a building, and I want to have it. This looks like a building, and I want to have a tag with buildings. I can type building, add tag, and now there's a new tag called building, and I can search here for building, and I'll get all the tags that have the tag building. It also searches for file names. There. Suppose I want to have all the trees replaced with this column. I can right click and I can say replace selected models. And now actually, yeah, all the trees are replaced with columns. So that makes it easy to replace everything. You can just click a model and place it anywhere. and that makes it quite easy to yeah, to edit your maps. Also, if you have another map like Komodo, I can put them side by side. I say, oh, I like this tree house here. Copy, paste, and you can just copy paste between maps. As before, the preview looks a little bit weird, but that should be fixed later. Okay, moving that back. So yeah, basically selecting objects, you can move them around, you can change them. But here on the right side, you can actually see some properties of objects. So actually, we can pick multiple objects here, and you can see yeah, the effects, the properties of those objects. And for 3D models, that's not super interesting. I mean, the position, you can move them higher or lower, or if you have two models here. Yeah, if it says multiple here, that means there's multiple different values. So if I drag this, it will all become the same value. But yeah, if I have a whole group of objects, that's not very useful. So undo, and then better use this one to move. And if you move it, yeah, basically you can hold Shift to snap to the grid. So right now the grid is set to 5. I can also enable snap to grid, and it always snaps to grid. And if I set this to, for instance, 50, yeah, you can see that it snaps to 50 or multiples of 50 when moving around. When it's snapping, you hold Shift, it stops snapping, so that way it's very easy to quickly position stuff with or without the grid. Works on all axes, so up and down, etc. Right now you can see it's set to -2, and when I move it up, it goes to -52. So here's where the global and the local grid comes in place. If you check this one and you move it down and up, you can see now it snaps to multiples of 50, so the actual world grid. And if I enable this and it's not set to a multiple of 50, it's going to add 50 to it or remove 50 from it. So that's the difference for this checkbox. Just going to undo that, put it all back. Then we have a rotate function, so I'm going to select all the same ones, sorry, the near ones. We can rotate them, and then we get a different gizmo. And here there is another icon here that says changes the pivot point for rotations. And right now, if I rotate, everything rotates in place. So let me disable the grid. Everything rotates in place. And when I enable that, they all move as a group. So that's very convenient to work with groups of objects. The grid snapping works here as well. So if you want to move them with, for instance, 50-degree angle increments, that's also possible. Or yeah, 90 degrees to just turn it in one go. You can all do that. Then, yeah, I also have an effect selected right now. There's an effect here in the middle. Oh, by the way, also scaling works, of course. So if I select the fountain in the middle, I can drag this middle thing without the grid, and things get bigger or smaller. So, yeah, there's some sound effects, etc. Over here on the left, you can see all your loaded maps. So by double clicking, you can collapse everything. So if I go to Frontera, you can see all the different categories. And actually, it's really easy right now. For instance, these look like walls. I don't know what you would call this. No, these are more like food stalls, props, whatever. You can go to the category, you can rename it. And everything gets renamed in one go. So now this is props. These are trees. So these are all the trees that I replaced. And this way you can make your maps a lot more readable. Then over here in the green are the effects. I'm gonna change this to moving. And this is, for instance, a smokestack. You can move it around as before. We can change the effect over here. So actually I can drag to make it a different number. Always undo if you want to. Or you can control click or double click and change it by typing. And you can change the properties. Also you should be actually able to click them, but not if there's a model behind it right now. So I can click it. Uh, that's still something I need to work on. So now I have two selected. I can move two of them at the same time. Yeah, over here and over here. And actually I can edit all the values at the same time as well. So they're now type 44 and now they're a different type. And if you click them again, this one changed and that one also changed. So yeah, that's basically the effects. Then we also have sound effects. Sound effects are in blue. And sound effects are placed over here. For instance, this is a Prontera bird. You can change all the properties as before. You can play them, so you can preview them. And actually that also works down here. So down here we have, for instance, all the effects. And right now I have no idea which ones are used. So I can say map Prontera. And now I get all the 3D models, but also all the effects that are used on this map. So if I search map Prontera and then effects, I just get all the effects that are used on this map. Well, say I want to get the Niflheim ghost. I can type map Niflheim effect and I see here the Niflheim ghost effect. Click it, then click over here. I'm going to raise it a little bit and you can change all the properties you want. Same applies for the sounds. So if I remove the filter here, I can type SE for sound effect. And these are basically the sound effects used on different maps. SE map Prontera. And now I get the emitter, now I get the sound effects that are used on this map. As before, the listing, the pop-up, you can't always see it, but for instance, this one, I can click it, place it, and I can right-click it, and here you can see all the tags that are attached to this sound, and there's also a play button. So yeah, that's some sound effects. These buttons, don't use them with sound effects. I think it's gonna crash, so don't do that yet. So yeah, that's basically the modeling. There's some pretty new, some options in here, so we can actually, if you have a couple of things selected, you can copy them, paste them. We can select invert, so then basically you get everything else that's selected. Select nearby, select the same model, select all. We can flip them. Well, this is not going to do much horizontally. They flipped. Flip vertically. That's not going to do much. That's basically if you have a group of objects, they will flip, but it won't change the rotation. We have a delete button to delete everything. And then here on the maps, we have a couple of options. We can save a map, open a new view to open a second view of the map. We can calculate the light maps. I'll get to that later. Something to make the tiles unique. That's a test debug thingy for the light maps. Clean tiles. That's to make sure that everything gets cleaned. That's so that it uses less tiles. Here in the bottom right, you can actually, when I click this map, you can actually see how many tiles are used on this map. You can see how many light maps we have and how many objects we have. Down here we can see the number of textures loaded, the 3D models that we have loaded, and the memory used by BrowEdit. So actually, over here we can export the light maps and the shadow maps and the tile colors. We can import them as well. And there's two options here if you want to include the walls in your export, and then if you want to include the borders of the shadow map. It's a little bit of a technical detail. Yeah, basically, if you just want to have a landscape shadow map, just disable these. If you have an indoor map, enable them. And then, yeah, some other options like clear the light maps. That should remove all the shadows. So now nothing has a shadow anymore, which we couldn't see anyway. It apparently doesn't work. It does work. And let's see, then we have something to smoothen the light maps and to make the light maps unique. These are all helper functions that are used when calculating light maps, but I put them in here individually so you can test them as well. Then there's a high-res screenshot function, and if you want to have your 8K textures, you can actually make a screenshot here, 8K, and it will save that in your, yeah, wherever you want to save it. So I think that is a little bit of a show around yeah, how to manipulate objects, how to edit objects. And I think the question a lot of people have is how the lighting works. So I'm going to go to my test map. There we go. And basically I use this map because it's nice and small and it calculates very quickly. And here we can see a couple of different features from this version. So we see some flowers here, which are just a texture wrapped on top of some polygons. And we have a tree, and as you know, in BrowEdit 1, the trees, they didn't give that good of shadow, yeah, good shadow quality. So that's all improved and better now. So we can go to Maps, Guild VS1, or and calculate light maps, or we can press Ctrl L and yeah, start light mapping. And this map actually has three lights, which we can show here with the Show All Lights button. So if you zoom out, you can see exactly where your lights are and how big they are. So I can, for instance, that's the same problem as before. I can, for instance, select this light and give it a little bit more range. And if you prefer, you can also just get the one that you selected. And you can make them light spheres so you can see the entire sphere around it, if you prefer that. Well, the BrowEdit 3 light mapper consists of two parts. So the lighting part with the lights and a sunlight part, which you can enable and disable. So if you don't want sunlight, you disable this and you don't get sunlight, which is going to be very bland. Because now we only have these lights and the rest is pretty dark. The darkness of this color, we can actually edit that. So I'm going to close these, go to my Guild VS1. And actually, if you select this thing here, the root of your map, over here we get the map properties. So here we can set the lighting properties. So the diffuse light, the ambient light, intensity, latitude and longitude. And as you can see, that affects how the light is calculated for the 3D models. So the longitude is to turn your light around the world. The latitude is the height of your light. And the intensity makes it more intense or less intense. Then we have the color of the ambient coloring. So diffuse and ambient. And if you click this, you can make your map, for instance, a little bit more red. So dark, whatever you prefer. You couldn't see that, but when you click this button here, you get a pop-up where you can pick the color. I'm gonna undo that. Everything has an undo nowadays. I'm gonna select the root node again here. And then there's two options here that are for the light mapper only. So these are specific for the light mapper algorithm. And this light map ambient here is the darkness of the stuff that's in the shadow. So if you set this to 0 and we calculate the light maps, you'll see that the ambient color, oh, here, the shadow part, is very dark. If I disable the sunlight, yeah, then basically you see nothing. The light map intensity is the intensity that gets added on top of your shadows. So right now the shadows are completely dark. If I set these to 0.5, which is halfway, and I calculate the light maps, this value here is 0.5, and this value here is 0.5, and this color here is 1, because the part that's in the light for your sunshine is going to be this one plus this one. So for normal ambient maps, combination of these two should work fine. Then there is the light bulbs. And these light bulbs, they can give all kinds of effects. So I'm gonna remove this one for now, remove this one for now, and just have a look at this light over here. And as you probably noticed before, there are quite some options here. So we can change the range of this light. We can give it a color. And for instance, if I want to make it yellow or white, and if I calculate the light match when it's light, there, I'm gonna change this back to the circle, this one. I still need to add icons for those. You can actually see that there's a light overlay right now, and the shadow map, let me disable everything here. Yeah, so the shadow map looks like this. You can see that's a little bit brighter over here around the light, but the color that you saw over there is really the color map. But just plainly visualizing the color map is not really useful. So you have to have some textures to see that. But this is a secondary color that gets added on top of the tiles. If you don't want that, you can disable the effects color map. And if I calculate now, it shouldn't affect the color map. It does cast some shadows, etc. on the shadow map, but and it removes the shadow here. So if you don't want it to affect the coloring, yeah, just enable that. I'm gonna enable all those again. And you can see that the lighting really affects the mood of this map. If you want to get that yeah, brighter, you can change the ambient color here and make it a little bit lighter. And that, yeah, completely changes the mood immediately already. And same for the diffuse color. If you make that a little bit lighter. That's actually also how they get the colors in Komodo, for instance. You can see the diffuse color here is red, ambient color is blue. And if you disable those, or if you change those to white, yeah, basically the map becomes all shiny and bright. Anyway, back to lighting. First property here was the color map and the color. Another option to not get any colors is just making it black. Black won't add anything, so if I calculate now with the effects color map, yeah, you don't see the coloring. And this way, actually, you can make it like a little bit of color added. And then you can see, oh, there's a little bit of a highlight here. Okay, these lights, they also give shadows. So if I place it more like over here, and I give it a little bit more intensity by giving it a bigger range, you can see that there's a dark streak here, which is the shadow casted by this column. Okay, then there are a couple of options. So we can save this one as a template, and that means that the light will get, well, when I remove this filter, the light will get saved in this folder here. And you can reuse the settings in this light easily And there's a couple of presets already, like some colored lights and a default light that you can just click in. Yeah, basically over here we can set the type of fall off, and that's very important for your lights. Right now, let me set it a little bit smaller again. Um, the light intensity is based on the distance from the light. So this point down here is closer than this point over here, and the intensity here should be higher than over there. There's some physics laws for that, and right now it's using a linear fall off, which is not realistic. And yeah, the easiest way to tweak that is by picking exponential here. And then with this value here, the exponents, you can change the light fall off. This one means the light will start falling off, yeah, like halfway, so around here. And then at the end, the intensity here will be 0. Over here, the intensity will be 1. So I can calculate it, and you can see the difference. It is quite bright, and then it falls off really quick. This, what you see here, by the way, is a shadow because the light gets blocked. And if I change this the other way around, you can see there's still some light, but it falls off a little bit more smooth. And actually, if I move my light to some solid floor here, you can see the effect even better. Let me change the lighting here and make the intensity of the sunlight 0. Hey, why is this not? That's very, very strange. I'm not seeing any effects of this. Okay, that is a weird bug. I'm gonna put this back. As you can see, there's still some points that need to be worked on. Okay, well, here you can see it again. Let me raise it a little bit because it's casting a weird shadow there. And actually, no. Anyway, as I was showing, I was trying to show the light fall off feature here. Right now you can see it's quite a big circle and then suddenly it drops off. Oh, this is the shadow from this column, of course. Um, and if I change this the other way, you'll see that it smooths out a little bit more and you get a whole different kind of lighting effect. And if I set this to red, for instance, it's a lot more obvious. There. So that's basically the fall off feature here. You can tweak it, you can change it however you like, but sometimes you want a little bit more. And for that, you can actually completely customize this graph. We have a spline tweak, a Lagrange tweak, and a linear tweak. Then we also have a magic function. Don't use that anymore. That's the old BrowEdit 2 lighting function, and it's a little bit slower than what we use now. So the linear tweak, you get this little graph down here, and if I calculate the light maps right now, you'll see that it's pretty basically the same as before, but I can add points here. So actually I can make it go down and then make it go up and then make it go down again, like a little bump. And this should give a weird effect where you get close by, you don't get any lighting, a little bit. So let's lower that even more, like this. So close by you don't get any lighting, then you get some lighting, and then the lighting is gone again. And yeah, you can make it a little bit smaller again to get to see the effects. Right now the little point is too small. So yeah, you can tweak this all you like. Oh, that's what you can do. But this is quite, yeah, jagged. So if you want to make it less jagged, there's also a Lagrange tweak. And you can right click here to remove these points. So we're back to default. If you click somewhere and add a point, you can see now it makes a smooth curve around this point. And I can add another point here. And you can see, yeah, that's there. So you can actually tweak it and make really strange light effects. And especially if you have a combination of different colors, two lights with different colors, you can get pretty cool effects. Right now the fall off here is very steep, so yeah, that's gonna fall off over here and give this the effect that it's completely lit. I think I should add a little button here. No wait, it's already here. So I said give shadows. If you disable that, it should it only ignores the objects right now, but it should also ignore these. So I'm gonna fix that as well, so you can make this completely red. Okay, this Lagrange tweak is quite cool, and I can add more points, but the problem with this thing is that it is numerically unstable, and that means it's, as you see, the curve over here changes as the curve over here changes as well. And if you add more points, eventually it's gonna get really hard to control this line properly. Like you can see, oh yeah, it starts oscillating really quick. So for that, there's also a spline tweak, and the spline tweak does that a little bit better. As you can see, the left part barely changes when I change the right part here. So that's some different functions that you can use to make all sorts of different lights. You can also copy paste lights like this, and then we can make this one blue, for instance, this one red. We can multi-select, and that's basically it. So thanks for watching, and I hope that this shows a little bit about the features in the new BrowEdit.